Over the weekend, the SNP released a compilation of all the promises from the Better Together campaign that have been broken so far. But who has time to read that? So, here's a video explaining it all for you in less than 4 minutes. Back in 2014, the No campaign made a big part of their campaign about how if we voted to leave the UK, we would also lose our position in the EU. And in fact, the only way to keep our position in the EU safe was to vote no. Ruth Davidson even chose to have a wee dig at Scottish Greens co-convener Patrick Harvie, calling him disingenuous to say a no vote would lead to us leaving the EU and yes to us staying in. In fact, she said the opposite was true. Jump forward 2 years and now who has egg on their face? It's you, Ruth. It's you. The grand irony is that after all that, the fact that Scotland voted overwhelmingly to stay in the EU and now faces being pulled out against its will just kind of highlights that whole democratic deficit thing the Yes movement have been talking about this entire time. Remember the one where Scotland has voted Labour and SNP for the last 50 or so years but's had Tory governments for nearly half that time despite never voting for them? Yeah, that one. That's the one. Remember the vow? That was the promise that was published in the front of the Daily Record from the leaders of Labour, the Lib Dems and the Conservatives that promised extensive new powers if we voted no. After the no vote, the Smith Commission was set up to work out what powers should be devolved to Scotland. Despite the hints at Devo Max and Gordon Brown's federalism, all we actually got was a piece of legislation that left 70% of tax raising powers and 85% of welfare powers at Westminster and not in the hands of the Scottish Parliament, which isn't surprising, given that the Unionist parties were actively preventing certain powers from coming to Scotland, such as when Labour straight up blocked power over trade union legislation being devolved, meaning that we're getting landed with Westminster's atrocious trade union bill, a bill that the Scottish Trade Unions Congress labelled as an attack on the fundamental human rights of workers. Thanks, Labour. The STUC also said that they were pretty disappointed altogether in the Scotland Bill, that being the legislation that came out of the Smith Commission. So did several third sector groups and the Cross-Party Devolution Committee, who also said that the bill falls short in several critical areas. That's pretty far off from what George Galloway described as Devo Supermax. Pre-referendum, we were told that shipyards would be under threat if we voted yes. The No campaign even went as far as saying that remaining in the UK would mean an order of 13 Type 26 frigates from the Royal Navy that'd go to Govan and Scotstoun shipyards. It definitely wasn't a bribe. So here we are, 2 years on, and the number has been reduced from 13 to just 8, which doesn't even matter, since the projects have been hit with continuous delays, risking jobs on the Clyde anyway. One of the reported reasons that order was being slashed was so that money could be piled into Trident instead. The kicker is that that money is being poured into the programme to keep nuclear weapons down the road from Scotland's largest city before the UK government has even voted on whether or not they will keep the programme. Before, renewables were safer in the UK. After, the UK government scrapped wind farm subsidies a year early. Before, HMRC jobs in Scotland provided a jobs dividend that would be put at risk in the event of a vote for independence. After, they announced the closure of the HMRC offices anyway, risking 2,000 jobs. We've also had the highest percentage of civil service jobs being cut over any other UK nation, despite the No campaign saying remaining in the UK meant protection for civil service jobs in Scotland. Before, they said Scotland benefits from UK grants, such as the one supporting the commercialisation of carbon capture and storage. After, they scrapped the programme 6 months before it was due to be awarded. It was expected Peterhead was to get the contract. They said we were better placed to support the most vulnerable in Scotland with a no vote, right before they went ahead and scrapped £12 billion from the welfare budget, a move which prompted the Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations to say that the budget was an attack on the most vulnerable in society. Now look, the fact is we don't know what would have happened in the event of a yes vote. Would things have been different? Maybe's aye, maybe's not. The point is that being a part of the UK does not safeguard us the way that we were told it would. Aye or no, there will always be uncertainty. Looking at the EU vote, with Scotland facing being pulled out despite 62% of the country voting to remain, it seems that remaining part of the UK may become actively damaging to Scotland. I think it's fair to say that many people will be re-evaluating their position on independence for Scotland. Anyway, thanks for watching, please do like and share, and follow us for more on news and politics in Scotland and around the world.